The stage lights burned hotter than the California sun, and Ezra Torres felt every degree of it. His heart thundered, a drumbeat drowning out the studio audience's cheers as he stood frozen, gripping Javier's hand backstage. In 30 seconds, they'd walk out together on national television, and Ezra wasn't ready. Not for the cameras, not for the world, and definitely not for meeting Javier's family for the first time on live TV. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Ezra had imagined meeting Javier's parents over a quiet dinner, maybe at their cozy home in San Diego, where they could laugh over homemade tamales and swap stories about Javier's childhood. Instead, he was about to face them on Family Ties, a reality show that reunited loved ones in front of millions, with every glance and word dissected by strangers online. Javier, ever the optimist, had pitched it as a grand gesture, a chance to show the world their love, to celebrate their one-year anniversary with a moment that would go viral for all the right reasons. Ezra, who'd spent most of his life dodging spotlights, had only agreed because he couldn't say no to Javier's infectious grin. Now, standing behind the velvet curtain, Ezra regretted every second of that decision. His palms were slick with sweat, his throat tight. Javier squeezed his hand, his warm brown eyes steady. "You've got this, easy. They're gonna love you. Just be you." But Ezra wasn't so sure. Being himself had never been easy, not in high school, not in his small hometown of Redding, and definitely not now, with the weight of a live audience and a past he'd tried to bury pressing down on him. The stage manager's voice crackled through a headset. 10 seconds. Places. Javier tugged Ezra forward, his energy a stark contrast to Ezra's dread. The curtain parted, and the roar of the crowd hit like a tidal wave. Ezra blinked against the blinding lights, his vision swimming as the host's voice boomed. "Welcome to Family Ties. Tonight, we're bringing together two incredible young men and a family reunion that'll tug at your heartstrings." Ezra forced a smile, his legs moving on autopilot as they stepped onto the glossy stage. The set was a dizzying mix of neon lights and plush furniture, designed to look like a living room, but feeling more like a gladiator arena. Javier waved at the audience, his charisma effortless, while Ezra scanned the faces in the crowd, searching for Javier's parents. He'd seen photos: Maria, with her warm smile and colorful scarves, and Carlos, with his stern jaw and kind eyes. But the seats reserved for them were empty. Ezra's stomach twisted. Where were they? The host, a woman named Tanya with a megawatt smile, bounded toward them. Javier Morales and Ezra Torres, everyone. These two have been together for a year, and tonight, Javier's surprising Ezra by introducing him to his family, live on national TV. The crowd erupted, and Ezra's smile faltered. He leaned closer to Javier, whispering, "Where are they?" Javier's grin flickered, but he covered it quickly, probably just waiting for the big reveal. "You know, dramatic effect." Ezra nodded, but the unease gnawed harder. Something felt off. Tanya gestured to a giant screen behind them. "Before we bring out the family, let's take a look at Javier and Ezra's love story." A pre-recorded montage began to play, showing clips of their life together. Javier teaching Ezra to surf on a Santa Monica beach, Ezra laughing as he burned their first attempt at dinner, the two of them dancing at a pride festival, rainbow paint streaked across their cheeks. The audience cooed and clapped, but Ezra barely heard them. His eyes were locked on the empty seats. The montage ended, and Tanya turned to them, her voice dripping with enthusiasm. "Javier, tell us why you wanted to share this moment with the world." Javier took the microphone, his voice steady but thick with emotion. "Ezra's my rock. He's been through so much, and he still shows up every day with this quiet strength that just it floors me. I wanted to bring him here, in front of everyone, to show him, and the world, that I'm proud to love him. And I want my family to meet the man who's changed my life." The crowd roared, and Ezra's chest tightened. He wanted to believe it, wanted to sink into Javier's words, but the empty seats loomed like a warning. Tanya clapped her hands. "Beautifully said. Now, let's not keep Ezra waiting. Let's bring out Javier's family." The lights dimmed, and a spotlight swung to the side of the stage. Ezra held his breath, expecting Maria and Carlos to step out, their faces beaming with the same warmth Javier always carried. Instead, a figure emerged from the shadows, a man, tall and broad-shouldered, with a familiar gait that sent a chill down Ezra's spine. The audience gasped, but Ezra's world tilted. He knew that silhouette, that slow, deliberate walk. It wasn't Carlos. It was Mr. Hargrove, his high school English teacher, the man who'd outed him to his entire school 6 years ago. Ezra's knees buckled, and Javier caught his arm, confusion flashing across his face. "Easy? What's wrong?" But Ezra couldn't speak. His past was walking toward him, dressed in a crisp suit, with the same stern expression that had haunted his nightmares. The audience murmured, sensing the shift in energy, but Tanya pressed on, oblivious. Here he is, folks. Javier's father figure, the man who's been a guiding light in his life. Ezra's mind reeled. Father figure? Javier had never mentioned Hargrove. Not once. How was this possible? Hargrove stopped a few feet away, his eyes locking onto Ezra's with a flicker of recognition and something else. Regret? Defiance? Ezra couldn't tell. All he could hear was the echo of Hargrove's voice from 6 years ago, reading Ezra's private journal aloud to the class, exposing his deepest secret to a room full of snickering teenagers. Ezra. Javier's voice was urgent now, his hand tight on Ezra's arm. Talk to me. What's going on? Ezra forced the words out, his voice barely a whisper. That's not your dad. He's the one who ruined my life. The crowd fell silent, the air thick with tension. Tanya's smile wavered, but she recovered quickly, gesturing to Hargrove. Let's hear from our special guest. Sir, tell us about your role in Javier's life, and now Ezra's. Hargrove stepped forward, his voice calm but carrying the weight of years. I've known Javier since he was a boy, mentored him through community programs. I'm proud to be here for him and to see Ezra again. His eyes met Ezra's, and the world seemed to shrink to just the two of them. We have history. Ezra's heart pounded so hard he thought it might burst. History. That was one way to put it. Another was betrayal. Another was pain. He wanted to run, to disappear, but Javier's hand anchored him. The cameras zoomed in, capturing every tremble, every bead of sweat. The nation was watching, and Ezra's past was about to collide with his present in a way he'd never imagined. Ezra's breath caught in his throat, the studio lights searing into his skin as Mr. Hargrove's words hung in the air. We have history. The phrase was a blade, slicing through the fragile armor Ezra had built over years of therapy and self-repair. He felt Javier's grip tighten, his boyfriend's confusion palpable, but Ezra couldn't look at him. Not yet. His eyes were glued to Hargrove, the man who'd once stood at the front of a classroom and shattered his world. 6 years ago, in a small Reading high school, Ezra had been a quiet kid, head down, scribbling poetry in a worn journal. He'd been 16, grappling with feelings he barely understood, let alone had the courage to voice. That journal was his sanctuary, where he poured out his fears, his dreams, his unspoken crush on a boy in his class. Hargrove, his English teacher, had found it one day after Ezra left it behind in a rush. Instead of returning it privately, Hargrove had read a page aloud to the class, exposing Ezra's secret to 30 snickering peers. The fallout was brutal. Whispers in the halls, slurs scrawled on his locker, his parents' cold silence at home. Ezra had left Reading the day he graduated, vowing never to look back. Now, Hargrove stood before him, not as a teacher but as Javier's father figure, a role Ezra couldn't reconcile. Javier's voice broke through his haze. Easy, what do you mean he ruined your life? How do you know him? The hurt in Javier's eyes was a fresh wound, but Ezra couldn't find the words, not with the cameras rolling, not with the audience leaning forward, hungry for drama. Tanya, sensing the tension, stepped in with her polished grin. Wow, sounds like there's a story here. Let's unpack this. Mr. Hargrove, why don't you share how you know Ezra? Hargrove cleared his throat, his posture stiff but his voice steady. Ezra was my student years ago in Reading. He was a bright kid, full of potential. We had a misunderstanding back then, and I'd hoped to make amends tonight. His tone was measured, almost rehearsed, but Ezra caught the flicker of unease in his eyes. Amends? The word felt like a mockery. Misunderstanding. Ezra's voice cracked, louder than he intended. The audience gasped, and Javier's hand slipped from his arm. You read my journal to the entire class. You outed me. Do you have any idea what that did to me? The words spilled out, raw and unfiltered, years of pain breaking free. The studio fell silent, the weight of his accusation hanging heavy. Tanya's smile faltered, but she pivoted like a pro. This is clearly a powerful moment. Let's take a quick break, and when we return, we'll dive deeper into this reunion. The crowd murmured as the cameras cut, and a producer rushed forward, whispering frantically to Tanya. Ezra turned to Javier, desperate to explain, but Javier's face was a storm of emotions: shock, betrayal, confusion. Easy, why didn't you tell me? Javier's voice was low, almost pleading. You said your high school years were rough, but this? He's the one who hurt you. Ezra swallowed hard, his throat dry. I didn't know he was connected to you. You never mentioned his name, just a mentor. I thought I'd left him behind. His voice broke, and he hated how small he sounded. Javier reached for him, but Ezra stepped back, the weight of the moment too much. Hargrove approached, his hands raised like he was calming a spooked animal. Ezra, I owe you an apology. I was wrong back then. I didn't understand the impact. Stop. Ezra's voice was sharp, cutting through Hargrove's words. You don't get to apologize on national TV and call it even. You don't get to rewrite what happened. The audience, still lingering in their seats, watched in hushed fascination. Ezra felt exposed, like his soul was being broadcast to millions. Javier stepped between them, his jaw tight. Mr. H, you didn't tell me any of this. You said you knew Ezra, but not this. His voice trembled, caught between loyalty to the man who'd mentored him and the man he loved. Ezra's heart ached at the conflict in Javier's eyes. Hargrove's expression softened, but there was a defensiveness in his tone. I was a different person then, Javier. I've changed. I've worked with kids like you, helped build community programs for queer youth. I thought tonight could be a chance to show that. Ezra laughed, a bitter sound that echoed in the quiet studio. You don't get to use me to prove you're a better person now. You don't get to make this about your redemption. He turned to Javier, his voice softer but no less urgent. I need air. I can't do this. Before Javier could respond, Ezra strode off the stage, ignoring the producer's protests and the audience's gasps. Backstage, the air was cooler, but his chest still felt like it was caving in. He leaned against a wall, trying to steady his breathing. The memories flooded back, his classmates' laughter, his parents' disappointment, the nights he'd spent wondering if he'd ever feel whole again. Javier followed, his footsteps hesitant. Easy, please. Talk to me. His voice was raw, and when Ezra met his gaze, he saw the same vulnerability that had drawn him to Javier in the first place. I didn't know. I swear. I thought this would be special, not this. Ezra wanted to be angry, to lash out, but Javier's sincerity disarmed him. I know you didn't know, he said quietly, but this is too much. That man, he broke me, Javi, and now he's here, acting like he's part of your family. Javier ran a hand through his hair, his frustration evident. He's not my dad. He was there when my real dad wasn't. He coached my soccer team, helped me get scholarships. I didn't know about you and him. Why didn't you tell me? Ezra's throat tightened. Because I was ashamed. Because I thought if I buried it deep enough, it wouldn't matter anymore. He looked away, his voice barely audible. I didn't want you to see me as that scared kid. Javier stepped closer, his hand hovering before gently touching Ezra's cheek. I see you, Easy. All of you. And I'm not going anywhere. His words were a lifeline, but Ezra wasn't sure he could grab it. Not yet. The stage manager's voice interrupted, sharp and urgent. Guys, we're back in 2 minutes. We need you on set." Javier cursed under his breath, but Ezra shook his head. "I can't go back out there," Ezra said, his voice firm. "Not with him." Javier's eyes searched his, torn between the show and the man he loved. "Then we'll leave. Together. Right now." Ezra hesitated, the weight of the decision pressing down. Walking away meant giving up Javier's dream of a grand moment, but staying meant facing a past he wasn't ready to confront. The clock was ticking, and the world was watching. Ezra's pulse hammered in his ears as he stood in the dim backstage corridor, Javier's offer hanging between them. Leave now, together, and escape the spotlight that threatened to unravel him. Or stay, face Hargrove, and confront a past that had festered for too long. The stage manager's impatient tapping foot echoed nearby, a reminder that millions were waiting for their next move. Javier's eyes, wide with urgency, locked onto his. "Easy, say the word, and we're out of here. I don't care about the show. I care about you." His voice was steady, but Ezra saw the tremor in his hands, the fear of losing what they'd built. It was that fear, mirrored in Ezra's own heart, that made him pause. Running was his instinct, but Javier deserved more than that. They both did. "I'll stay," Ezra said, the words heavy but resolute. "But not for him. For us." Javier's relief was palpable, his shoulders sagging as he pulled Ezra into a quick, fierce hug. "Thank you," Javier whispered, his breath warm against Ezra's ear. "We'll do this together." The stage manager ushered them back toward the set, her headset buzzing with instructions. As they stepped into the blinding lights, the audience's cheers felt like a wall of sound, both welcoming and suffocating. Tanya was already in position, her smile a little too bright, as if she could gloss over the tension that crackled in the air. Hargrove stood to the side, his expression unreadable, but Ezra refused to meet his gaze. "Not yet." "Welcome back to Family Ties," Tanya's voice boomed, pulling the crowd's focus. "We've got an unexpected twist tonight, folks. Ezra and Mr. Hargrove have a shared past, and we're going to explore that right now. Ezra, why don't you share what happened all those years ago?" Ezra's mouth went dry, the microphone in his hand feeling like a lead weight. The cameras zoomed in, their lenses glinting like predators. He glanced at Javier, who nodded subtly, his presence a quiet anchor. Ezra took a deep breath, forcing his voice to steady. "When I was 16, he began, I was figuring out who I was. I wrote about it in a journal, private thoughts, things I wasn't ready to share. Mr. Hargrove found it and read it to my entire class. He outed me as gay to everyone, without my consent." The words burned, but saying them aloud felt like shedding a weight. The audience was silent, their earlier excitement replaced by a heavy, attentive hush. Tanya's eyes widened, but she recovered quickly. "That sounds incredibly difficult, Ezra. Mr. Hargrove, how do you respond to that?" Hargrove stepped forward, his hands clasped tightly. "I made a mistake," he said, his voice low but clear. "I thought I was teaching a lesson about honesty, about owning your truth. I didn't realize the harm I was causing. I was wrong, and I've carried that regret for years." Ezra's jaw clenched. The apology sounded sincere, but it was too clean, too polished. He wanted to believe Hargrove had changed, but the scars from that day still ached. "You didn't just make a mistake," Ezra said, his voice rising. "You humiliated me. My classmates tormented me. My parents, they didn't speak to me for months. You don't get to call that a mistake and move on." The audience murmured, some nodding, others whispering. Javier's hand found Ezra's, squeezing gently, a silent reminder that he wasn't alone. Tanya, sensing the moment's intensity, turned to Javier. "Javier, you didn't know about this history. How are you feeling right now?" Javier's face was a mix of anger and heartbreak. I'm pissed, honestly. Mr. H was someone I trusted, someone who helped me when I was a kid. But hearing this, what he did to Ezra, he shook his head, his voice thick. I don't know how to process it. I just know I'm here for Easy, no matter what." The crowd erupted in applause, and Ezra felt a flicker of warmth amidst the chaos. Javier's loyalty was a lifeline, but the weight of Hargrove's presence still pressed down. Tanya gestured to the empty seats. We were expecting Javier's parents tonight, but due to unforeseen circumstances, they couldn't be here. Mr. Hargrove stepped in as a significant figure in Javier's life. Let's talk about that connection. Hargrove nodded, his voice softer now. When Javier's father left, I was his coach, his mentor. I saw his potential and wanted to support him. I never imagined I'd be standing here, facing Ezra again, but I'm grateful for the chance to make things right. Ezra's stomach twisted. Make things right. The phrase felt hollow, like a promise made too late. He wanted to scream, to demand answers, but the cameras held him in check. Every word was being broadcast, every emotion dissected. He felt exposed, raw, but he also felt a spark of defiance. He wasn't that scared kid anymore. He was stronger, and he had Javier. I don't know if you can make this right, Ezra said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. But I'm not here for you. I'm here for Javier, for the life we're building. You don't get to define me anymore. The audience roared, some standing, their cheers a wave of support. Javier's eyes shone with pride, and for the first time that night, Ezra felt like he could breathe. Tanya, sensing a shift, clapped her hands. What a powerful moment. Let's take another quick break, and when we return, we'll see where this journey takes us. As the cameras cut, Ezra turned to Javier, ignoring the chaos around them. I'm sorry I didn't tell you, he said softly. I didn't want that part of me to touch us. Javier shook his head, pulling Ezra close. You don't have to apologize. I love you, Easy. All of you, even the parts you're scared to show. Their foreheads touched, a quiet moment amidst the storm. Hargrove lingered nearby, his expression conflicted. Ezra caught his gaze, and for a moment, he saw something human, regret, maybe, or shame. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. The show wasn't over, and neither was this confrontation. The studio lights flared back on, and Ezra braced himself as the audience's applause swelled. Javier's hand remained in his, a steady tether as they faced the next segment of Family Ties. Tanya's voice cut through the noise, bright and commanding. We're back, and what a night it's been. Ezra, Javier, Mr. Hargrove. This reunion has taken an unexpected turn. Let's dive deeper. Ezra, what would it take for you to find closure? Ezra's mind raced. Closure? The word felt like a trap, too neat for the mess of emotions churning inside him. He glanced at Javier, whose encouraging nod gave him the push he needed. I don't know if closure's possible, Ezra said, his voice raw but firm. What happened changed me. It made me hide who I was for years. But I'm not here to forgive or forget. I'm here to move forward, with Javier. The crowd cheered, and Javier's smile was a quiet victory. Tanya turned to Hargrove, her tone softer. Mr. Hargrove, you've heard Ezra's pain. What do you want to say to him now? Hargrove's shoulders slumped slightly, the weight of the moment visible. Ezra, I can't undo what I did. I was a teacher, supposed to protect my students, and I failed you. I've spent years working with queer youth, trying to make up for it, but I know that doesn't erase your pain. If you'll let me, I'd like to start earning your trust. Ezra's chest tightened. Part of him wanted to believe Hargrove, to see the man before him as different from the one who'd betrayed him. But trust? That was a bridge too far. I hear you, Ezra said, his voice measured. But trust isn't something you can just ask for. It's earned, and you're starting from less than zero. The audience murmured, some nodding in approval, others whispering in surprise. Javier squeezed Ezra's hand, his pride evident. Tanya, sensing the emotional peak, shifted gears. Javier, this is a lot for you too. How are you holding up, knowing your mentor and your boyfriend have this history? Javier's jaw tightened, his eyes flicking between Ezra and Hargrove. It's hard. Mr. H was there for me when I had no one. He pushed me to be better, to dream bigger. But hearing what he did to EZ, it's like I don't know him. I need time to figure out what this means. Tanya nodded, her expression sympathetic. This is what Family Ties is all about, facing tough truths and finding a way forward. Let's bring in another perspective. We have a surprise guest who's been watching from backstage. Ezra's stomach dropped. Another surprise? He couldn't handle more shocks. The spotlight swung to the side, and a woman stepped out. Maria, Javier's mother, her colorful scarf a bright splash against the stage's sleek backdrop. The crowd erupted, and Javier's face lit up, relief washing over him. "Mom," he called, stepping forward to hug her. Maria embraced him tightly, her eyes glistening. "I'm so sorry we couldn't get here sooner, Mijo. Your father's flight was delayed, but I'm here now." She turned to Ezra, her smile warm but tentative. "Ezra, it's so good to finally meet you." Ezra managed a nod, his throat tight. Maria's kindness was genuine, but the weight of Hargrove's presence still loomed. She glanced at Hargrove, her expression shifting to something unreadable. "James," she said, addressing Hargrove by his first name, "I didn't know you'd be here." Hargrove's face softened. "Maria, I wanted to support Javier, and to face my past with Ezra." Maria's lips pressed into a thin line, but she said nothing, her focus returning to Ezra and Javier. Tanya seized the moment. "Maria, you're meeting Ezra for the first time on this stage. What's going through your mind?" Maria's voice was steady, but her eyes held a depth of emotion. "I'm proud of my son for loving so fiercely. And Ezra, I see how much you mean to him. I don't know all the history here, but I know family isn't just blood, it's the people who show up for you. I want to be that for you too." Ezra's eyes stung, and he blinked hard, unprepared for the warmth in Maria's words. Javier's hand found his again, grounding him. "Thank you," Ezra said, his voice barely above a whisper. The audience clapped, their support a soft wave compared to the earlier frenzy. Tanya turned to the crowd. "Let's give it up for this incredible family, working through pain and building something new." The applause swelled, but Ezra felt a quiet resolve settling in. Maria's presence was a balm, but Hargrove's shadow still lingered. He wasn't ready to forgive, but he was ready to fight for the life he and Javier were building. As the segment wrapped, Tanya announced another break, and the cameras cut. Maria pulled Ezra into a hug, her embrace surprisingly strong. "You're stronger than you know," she whispered. "Javier's lucky to have you." Ezra nodded, his throat too tight to respond. Javier stood beside him, his arm around Ezra's shoulders, but his eyes kept flicking to Hargrove, who stood alone at the edge of the stage. The tension between them was a tightrope, and Ezra knew they'd have to cross it eventually. Backstage, Maria spoke quietly to Javier, her voice too low for Ezra to hear. Hargrove approached cautiously, his hands in his pockets. "Ezra, can we talk? Just for a moment?" Ezra stiffened, but Javier's nod gave him the courage to agree. "Fine, but not here." They stepped into a quiet corner, the noise of the studio fading. Hargrove's face was lined with regret, but Ezra wasn't ready to let him off the hook. "I know you don't trust me," Hargrove began, "and I don't blame you. But I need you to know I've spent years trying to understand the harm I caused. I work with kids now, helping them navigate coming out, giving them the support I didn't give you." Ezra's fists clenched. "That's great for them, but it doesn't change what you did to me." Hargrove nodded, his eyes downcast. "I know. I hope one day you'll see I'm trying to be better." Ezra didn't respond. He didn't owe Hargrove anything, not forgiveness, not closure. But as he walked back to Javier and Maria, he felt a small shift inside him. Not healing, not yet, but the beginning of something stronger, a refusal to let his past define his future. Ezra's heart still raced as he rejoined Javier and Maria backstage, the echo of Hargrove's words lingering like a bitter aftertaste. The studio buzzed with crew members adjusting lights and cameras, preparing for the final segment of Family Ties. Javier's arm slid around Ezra's waist, a quiet reassurance, but the tension between them was palpable. Maria's presence was a comfort, her warm eyes scanning Ezra with concern. "You okay, Mijo?" she asked, her voice soft. Ezra nodded, though he wasn't sure it was true. "Just a lot." Maria squeezed his shoulder, her touch grounding him in a way he hadn't expected. Javier's gaze flickered to Hargrove, who stood a few feet away, speaking quietly with a producer. The conflict in Javier's eyes was clear. He was torn between the man he loved and the mentor he'd trusted for years. Tanya's voice called them back to the stage, her enthusiasm undimmed despite the night's intensity. We're live in 1 minute. The trio returned to the set, the audience's energy a mix of anticipation and empathy. Ezra felt their eyes on him, a weight he was starting to resent. This was supposed to be about him and Javier, not his past, not Hargrove's redemption arc. As the cameras rolled, Tanya faced the crowd. Welcome back to Family Ties. We've witnessed raw emotion tonight, and now we're heading into our final segment. Ezra, Javier, Maria, let's talk about what's next for you all. Ezra, you faced a painful part of your past tonight. How do you move forward from here? Ezra took a deep breath, the microphone amplifying his unsteady exhale. I don't have all the answers, he said, his voice raw but steadying. What happened back then shaped me, but it doesn't own me. I'm here with Javier, with Maria, building something real. That's what matters. The audience clapped, their support a warm wave. Javier's smile was small but genuine, his hand finding Ezra's again. Tanya turned to Maria. Maria, you've just met Ezra under extraordinary circumstances. What do you hope for this new chapter with him and Javier? Maria's eyes shone with emotion. I hope for love, she said simply. For my son to be happy, for Ezra to feel safe with us. Family isn't perfect, but it's about showing up, even when it's hard. I want Ezra to know he has a home with us. Ezra's throat tightened, and he blinked back tears. Maria's words were a gift he hadn't expected, a reminder that family could be chosen, not just inherited. Javier squeezed his hand, his own eyes glistening. Mom's right, he said, his voice thick. Easy, you're my home. No matter what. The crowd erupted, some standing, their cheers a testament to the moment's raw honesty. Tanya, ever the showwoman, turned to Hargrove, who'd been quiet since their backstage talk. Mr. Hargrove, you've been part of this journey tonight. Any final thoughts? Hargrove's expression was heavy, his voice measured. I came here for Javier, but I've learned more about myself tonight than I expected. Ezra didn't respond, but he held Hargrove's gaze, searching for sincerity. There was something there, regret, maybe growth, but it wasn't enough to bridge the gap. Not yet. Tanya sensed the moment's weight and pivoted to the audience. Let's give it up for this incredible group, facing their truths and forging a path forward. As the applause swelled, Tanya announced a surprise. Before we wrap, we have one more guest, Javier's father, Carlos, joining us via video call. The giant screen lit up, and Carlos's face appeared, his features weathered but kind, his smile mirroring Javier's. I'm so sorry I couldn't be there in person, Carlos said, his voice warm. Ezra, Javier's told me so much about you. You're part of our family now. Ezra's heart swelled, the words sinking in deeper than he'd expected. Javier's grin was radiant, and Maria wiped a tear from her cheek. The audience cheered, the moment a brief reprieve from the night's tension. But Ezra's eyes drifted to Hargrove, who stood at the edge of the stage, his expression unreadable. The man was a shadow Ezra couldn't shake, but Carlos and Maria's warmth reminded him he wasn't alone. As the show wrapped, Tanya thanked the audience, and the cameras cut. The studio buzzed with post-show chaos, but Ezra felt a strange calm. Javier pulled him close, his voice low. You were amazing out there. I'm so proud of you. Ezra leaned into him, exhaustion and relief warring inside him. I don't know what I did to deserve you, he murmured. Maria joined them, her smile soft. You two take care of each other. That's all I ask. She glanced at Hargrove, who lingered nearby, and her expression hardened slightly. James, we need to talk later, she said, her tone firm but not unkind. Hargrove nodded, his eyes downcast. I understand, Maria. He looked at Ezra, hesitating. I meant what I said. I'll keep trying. Ezra didn't respond, but he didn't look away either. The night had been a crucible, burning away some of his fear, but leaving questions unanswered. As they left the stage, Javier's arm around him, Ezra felt the weight of the past, but also the pull of the future. a future with Javier, with Maria, with a family that was starting to feel real. Backstage, as they prepared to leave, Javier's phone buzzed with notifications. The show was already trending online, clips of Ezra's confrontation with Hargrove going viral. Javier showed him a post from a queer youth group, praising Ezra's courage. "You're inspiring people, EZ," Javier said, his voice full of awe. Ezra shook his head, a small smile breaking through. "I just wanted to survive tonight." But as he looked at Javier, at Maria, he felt a spark of hope. Maybe surviving was enough for now. Maybe it was the start of something more. The Los Angeles night was cool as Ezra, Javier, and Maria stepped out of the studio, the neon glow of the city a stark contrast to the artificial lights of family ties. The air felt cleaner, freer, but Ezra's chest still carried the weight of the night. Javier's arm was around his shoulders, a steady warmth, while Maria walked beside them, her presence a quiet strength. The show was over, but the echoes of Hargrove's apology, the audience's cheers, and Ezra's own raw vulnerability lingered. They headed to a nearby diner, a small, retro place with red vinyl booths and the smell of fresh coffee. It was Maria's idea, a chance to decompress away from the cameras and crowds. As they slid into a booth, Javier reached for Ezra's hand under the table, his thumb tracing small circles. "You okay?" he asked, his voice soft but searching. Ezra managed a nod, though his mind was a tangle of emotions. "I don't know what I am," he admitted. "That was a lot." Maria's eyes softened, and she reached across the table, resting her hand on his. "You were brave tonight, Ezra," she said. "Not many people could stand up like that, with the whole world watching. I'm proud to know you." Ezra's throat tightened, her words hitting deeper than he expected. He'd spent so long feeling like an outsider, even with Javier, but Maria's acceptance felt like a door opening. "Thank you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't expect him to be there." Javier's jaw tightened, his gaze dropping to the table. "I didn't either. I should have checked, should have known who they were bringing out." "I'm sorry, EZ." Ezra shook his head. "It's not your fault. You couldn't have known." He paused, the weight of Javier's conflict pressing down. "But Hargrove, he's important to you. I don't want to come between that." Javier's eyes snapped up, fierce. "You're not. He messed up, EZ. Big time. I don't know if I can look at him the same way now." His voice cracked, and Ezra saw the pain of losing a mentor, someone who'd been a father when his own was absent. Maria sipped her coffee, her expression thoughtful. "James helped Javier when we were struggling," she said, her voice measured. "But what he did to you, Ezra, that's not something we can ignore. I'll talk to him, make sure he understands the weight of it. Family means accountability, too." Ezra nodded, grateful for her clarity. The diner's hum, clinking dishes, soft chatter, felt like a cocoon, shielding them from the chaos of the night. But the world outside was buzzing. Javier's phone kept vibrating, notifications piling up from friends, strangers, and queer advocacy groups. A clip of Ezra's speech had gone viral, with hashtags like Ezra Speaks and Own Your Truth trending. Javier showed him a message from a teen in Ohio. "I saw you on TV. I'm scared to come out, but you made me feel like I could be brave someday." Ezra's eyes stung, and he set the phone down. "I didn't think anyone would care what I said," he murmured. "I was just trying to survive." Javier's smile was soft, proud. "You did more than survive. You showed people they're not alone." He leaned closer, his voice dropping. "You showed me how strong you are." Ezra's heart skipped, but the warmth was tempered by a lingering question. "What about Hargrove?" he asked. "He's out there, probably waiting to talk to you. What do we do?" Javier sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know. I need to hear him out, but not at your expense. You're my priority, EZ." Maria set her mug down, her gaze steady. "Let's take it one step at a time. Tonight was a lot for everyone. Javier, you and James need to talk, but not tonight. Ezra, you need rest, and so does my son. We'll figure this out together." Ezra nodded, the weight of her words settling him. Together. It was a word he hadn't trusted in a long time, But with Javier and Maria, it felt possible. The waitress brought their food, burgers and fries, simple comfort. And for a moment, they ate in companionable silence, the kind that didn't need filling. As they left the diner, the city sparkled around them, alive with possibility and chaos. Javier's phone buzzed again, this time with a text from Hargrove. "Can we talk tomorrow? I owe you both more than I gave tonight." Javier showed it to Ezra, his expression conflicted. "What do you think?" Javier asked. "I don't want to push you, but I think he's trying." Ezra's instinct was to say no, to shut the door on Hargrove forever. But something in Javier's eyes, hope, maybe, or a need for closure, made him pause. "Maybe," he said finally, "but not for him. For you. And only when I'm ready." Javier's relief was palpable, and he pulled Ezra into a hug, his lips brushing Ezra's forehead. "Thank you," he whispered. Maria watched them, her smile soft but knowing, like she saw the strength they drew from each other. As they walked to their car, Ezra felt the night's weight lifting, just a little. The past was still there, a shadow he couldn't fully escape, but it wasn't the only thing defining him. He had Javier, Maria, and a future they were building together. For the first time, he felt like he could face whatever came next, not because he was fearless, but because he wasn't alone. The morning sun filtered through the curtains of Javier's small Los Angeles apartment, casting soft light across the living room where Ezra sat, a mug of coffee warming his hands. Javier was in the kitchen, humming as he made breakfast, the scent of pancakes filling the air. It was a quiet moment, a stark contrast to the chaos of the previous night on Family Ties. But Ezra's mind was far from calm, still wrestling with the weight of Hargrove's reappearance and the viral storm their story had ignited online. Javier slid a plate of pancakes in front of Ezra, his smile gentle. "You didn't sleep much, did you?" he asked, sitting across from him. Ezra shook his head, managing a small smile. "Too much in my head." He paused, his fingers tracing the mug's rim. "I keep thinking about what happens next. Hargrove, your family, us." Javier reached for his hand, his touch steady. "We'll figure it out, easy. One step at a time, like Mom said." He hesitated, then added, "Hargrove texted again. He wants to meet, just the three of us. No cameras, no pressure. What do you think?" Ezra's stomach twisted, but he didn't pull away. "I don't know if I'm ready to hear him out," he admitted. "But I know he matters to you. I don't want you to lose that because of me." Javier's eyes softened. "You're not making me choose, easy. I'm choosing you every time. But maybe hearing him out could help us both move forward. Not forgive, not forget, just understand." Ezra nodded slowly, the idea settling uneasily, but not impossibly. "Okay, but it's on our terms. Somewhere neutral, and I get to walk away if it's too much." "Deal," Javier said, his grin returning. "You're calling the shots." Later that day, they met Hargrove at a quiet park near the beach, the sound of waves a soothing backdrop. Hargrove sat on a bench, looking older in the daylight, his hands clasped tightly. Ezra and Javier sat across from him, close but not touching, a united front. Hargrove's eyes met Ezra's, and for the first time, there was no stage, no audience, just the three of them. "Thank you for coming," Hargrove began, his voice low. "I know this isn't easy, Ezra. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want to explain, and maybe start to make amends." Ezra stayed silent, letting him speak. Hargrove took a breath, his gaze distant. "Back then, I thought I was helping you by pushing you to be open. I was wrong, horribly wrong. I didn't understand the harm, the isolation it caused. I've spent years working with queer kids, trying to give them what I failed to give you. But I know that doesn't erase what I did." Ezra's chest ached, the sincerity in Hargrove's voice clashing with the pain of memory. "Why didn't you reach out before?" he asked, his voice steady but sharp. "You knew where I was from. You could have found me." Hargrove's face fell. "I was ashamed. I didn't think you'd want to hear from me. When Javier told me about you, I realized this was my chance to face what I'd done. I didn't expect it to happen on TV. That was a mistake, too." Javier shifted, his voice firm. You should have told me, Mr. H. I trusted you, and you let me walk into that blind. Hargrove nodded, his expression heavy. I know. I thought I could handle it, make it right on the show. I was wrong about that, too. Javier, you're like a son to me. And Ezra, I owe you more than I can ever repay. Ezra's throat tightened, but he forced himself to speak. I don't know if I'll ever trust you, but I see you're trying. That's something. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a step. A small one, but his own. Hargrove's eyes glistened, and he nodded. That's more than I deserve. I'll keep working to earn it, if you'll let me. The conversation ended quietly, no grand resolutions, just an understanding that healing would take time. As they walked back to the car, Javier's hand found Ezra's, their fingers intertwining. You okay? Javier asked, his voice soft. Ezra nodded, feeling lighter than he had in days. Yeah, not fixed, but okay. He glanced at Javier, a small smile breaking through. You're still here. That's what matters. Javier grinned, pulling him close. Always easy. Always. Weeks later, Ezra and Javier sat on their couch, scrolling through messages from strangers inspired by their story. A queer youth center in San Diego had invited them to speak, and Maria had already planned a family dinner to officially welcome Ezra. The past wasn't gone, but it was no longer a chain. Ezra looked at Javier, his heart full, and knew they'd face whatever came next, together. Their story wasn't just theirs anymore. It was a beacon for others, a reminder that love could be a revolution, quiet but fierce. And as Ezra leaned into Javier's embrace, he felt the truth of it. They were building a future stronger than any pain from the past.